Alright, as you can see, I made a lot of room on the side to be able to pull the axle shaft, have the car kind of more in the center of the garage, and I'll be able to pull the other car out of here when I need to. So that's the first thing you need to understand, because the axle shaft is going to come out and it's, you know, half the length of the axle. So first thing we're going to do is get the car up in the air, and since we need the rear of the car in the air, I found it kind of easier to lift from here. So I just have the jack under here, and I'm going to lift it right in front of the subframe connector so that I'm not pinching anything. And once I get the back end of the car up in the air, then I'll put the jack under there and then go around the other side and just make sure that we have it secured on jack stands in the rear. Alright, so as you can see, I've lifted up with the jack, and now I'm just going to support it with this jack stand. I'm going to put it right on that box back here. So then I just came around the other side and lifted up on the front as well, just to get this back part in the air. So then now, as you see, we're going to have plenty of room to work here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is remove the wheels, and we're also going to have to remove the brakes, and that way we're going to be able to slide the axle shafts out when we get to that point. Alright, so with the e-brake on, I broke all the lug nuts loose. Now I just have a little impact gun just to kind of speed the process up. Okay, now we'll just take the wheel off, and that'll expose our brake and caliper. Set the wheel aside. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is make sure that the parking brake is not on, so that we'll be able to take the caliper off of the disc. So we're going to take this red part off, and to do that, there's a bolt right here on the back side, and there's another one down low, right there. So we're going to take those two bolts off and be able to slide the whole caliper off of the disc. Now I have my 15mm wrench, and I choose not to use my ratcheting ones for this just because, well, you'll see. What we're going to do is put it on the back side of this caliper bracket, and then we're going to hit it with a hammer right on the side just to break it loose. And so since we're going counterclockwise, remember you're looking at the bolt backwards, so we're going to hit it what would appear to be clockwise. And so we're going to do that to break that one loose. Okay, so as you can see, I broke it loose and now it's ready to go. So that's the top one. Now on the bottom one we have a little bit of a complication because you have the brake line. See right here you have the rear emergency brake line that comes over, and it goes right in front of that bolt. Now what I'm going to do now is disconnect the parking brake line. So as you can see, it's a line that comes up through here. There's no fluid in it, you know, it's a cable, and it comes up into this mechanism here. What you can do is kind of put a pry bar here and rotate the assembly, which I don't recommend because the spring actually comes up into here and you don't want it to come undone. Something you might be able to do, which I was just because the brakes were loose enough, grab a pair of pliers and just pull, and you can just pull it right out of this loop, just pull it right out, and then pull the whole housing right here away. So that's how you can undo the brakes. There's also a little C-clip right here that you'll pull out to be able to pull the brake line through that hole. Pull it right on through. So here we are on the top. I'm just going to get this one out and set it aside. And on the bottom, what I've been doing is just going at it slowly with the regular wrench open end, and I've been pushing the caliper towards that way so that it's not eating away at the brake line. So I'm not contacting the brake line by applying pressure against it. So as you can see, this bolt is now not contacting the caliper anymore. It's been completely removed. The one's off at top as well, so now all we have to do is just slide the caliper off of the disc, and we're going to make sure that we either hang the caliper up here with the car where it's not going to hang by the actual brake line, or set it down on like a bucket or something that'll keep it up, but we just do not want to suspend the caliper on its own. So as you can see here, I just zip tied the caliper. Remember, not by the line, that's not doing you any good. Make sure it's actually around the caliper housing here where it's not going to hurt anything. And I just zip tie it up around so that those are not hanging. And this is on the other side of the car. I'm ready just to remove this brake and move on. Sometimes you'll find a little ring right here, like a washer, that just kind of goes over there and holds the disc on. So just make sure you take that off with a screwdriver. I see a lot of moisture down in there as well, indicating that the pressure from inside the axle might have blown the seal out. See, there's a cap on the axle. It's on the other side, but it's a breathing cap. It's right about here, but on the other side, just like a little peg that sticks up. And it's supposed to depressurize the inside of the axle. And if that gets clogged, then you can have pressure build up and likely do this, where it'll blow the seal out. And when I took the fill plug off of the differential just to see if make sure we still had fluid in there, I heard it all depressurize. So. Alright, our next step is going to be to remove the rear differential cover. There's 10 bolts here, and the best size that I found that works on those is the 1/2 inch. So here it is, it's just, the fluid's just starting to come out, and I did have to get a screwdriver in there, and you will have to pry into it and just kind of go into the cover a little bit and pry back, but just be careful not to pry too much so that you end up bending something more than it should. But that's the point, is you just want to kind of open up the bottom of it. I took out all the bolts all the way around, but now the whole thing could potentially just come off, so you want to be careful about that too. But I'm just kind of prying up on the bottom of it to let the fluid out, and the silicone is still holding the rest of it in place. But once you get it pretty much out, you can, and you've loosened it up all the way around, maybe put the screwdriver in over here, at the top, the sides, then give it a few light pounds with a hammer to move the whole thing to break it loose, so you're not prying one spot on it. So here it is, I just pried up kind of on the bottom of that cover until it was kind of coming out pretty good, and eventually, when most of the fluid was off, just kind of pulled the whole cover off by hand. So here we are in the inside of the gears. Got the traction lock and everything, and now there's still fluid that's down here in the bottom. So I'm going to put a plastic bag over my hand, and then I'm going to scoop the rest of that out as well. And I'm just letting it fall right here into my drain pan. Then I have cardboard down after that too. This stuff really smells pretty bad. Alright, so with the bag over my hand, I don't know how well you can see this, I'm just kind of scooping out the fluid that's left in there. Kind of looking it over, and I'm going to be looking for metal shavings or anything that's coming out, but so far so good. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is to get the axle shafts out. There's a post right here. It's running into the traction lock. And we're going to take this out by undoing this bolt that holds it in place. So we'll take that out, slide the pin out, and then we'll be able to push the axle shafts inward. And as we'll turn the traction lock up. And then as you push the axles inward, you'll see the posts will be exposed on the ends of the axle shafts. And we're going to take some C-clips off of it, and that's going to allow us to take the axle completely out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this 8mm wrench and just kind of fit it right over there, and I'm just going to break that loose, remove it, and then slide the pin out. Alright, so I broke this loose, and a little trick is to reach behind, so hold on to the other side where the drive shaft connects to the yoke, and then with the other hand break it loose on this one. So as you can see, this is now loose enough to take out, and it's a pretty long bolt because it's going into that pin like this. So that's what's keeping everything in place. So when you pull this out, make sure you don't lose it. And then next thing we're going to do is pop the pin out. So here's the pin, it's on its way out. I reached up behind the traction lock and pushed on the other end. And now, as I push, you'll see it just starts to come out, and then you just pull it out, and it's pretty slippery from being in there, but this is what that other bolt was in. And I'm just going to rotate this down now. It's always handy, just grab on the yoke side and turn it. Okay. So we're going to push on this axle shaft inward to be able to get that C-clip out that's still holding it in place. And as you can see, you have this right there, that's the ABS sensor. It's measuring every time, it's a magnetic thing that's measuring every time that wheel passes by. So we're going to remove that by taking out the little bolt on the back side right here. We're just going to take out this little bolt and then just pop the whole thing out. So this 1/4 inch ratchet seemed to do the trick. It's just the perfect size. There you go. So once that's pulled out, we're just going to slide or just push that through. There. So now the axle shaft can go farther in. It's kind of hard to see, but now the axle shaft can be pushed in, and we'll be able to get the C-clip out by the vertical part of the S-clip. And so as we push it in, there, I just pushed it in with my leg. You can see how it came in, and now there's a clip on that, a little brass C-clip that we're going to pull out, and that's what's holding the axle in. Alright, so what I did is I just pushed directly on it until it fell out, and now it's just down in the bottom of the case, so I'll fish it out. And then, so now we'll be able to pull the axle shaft out, and then to get the other one out, same thing. Okay, so now that we have that C-clip out, we can pull straight out on the axle shaft. And then the whole thing comes right out. There it is. So when you look through, you can see all the way through to the other side, and kind of like looking down the barrel of a gun. So here's the seal. This is the axle seal right here, and then these little roller bearings, that's the axle wheel bearing. Alright, so here we are on the passenger side of the car, and we're going to take off the seal here, and then we're going to take the wheel bearing out. So the first thing we're going to do is take just a hammer with the claw in the back, and be careful that you do not dig into the actual housing. Just put it inside the lip right here of the seal. Make sure that all you see that's being bent is the seal itself. And they're pretty firm, so just give it a little bit of a tug, and they'll pop right out. Okay. So now in here, if you can see, here's the wheel bearing. Okay. And so what we're going to do to get that out is use a slide hammer with this attachment. And this is a wheel bearing attachment. So what it does is you put it flat and you slide it in behind the wheel bearing. We're going to loosen it up here first so we can get in there. But you're going to put it inside behind the wheel bearing. Then when it flattens out, it'll catch on the way back. Then we'll add tension with this washer. So get it in there so that you know that you're behind it. And then when you feel it lock in and everything's good, slide the washer up and tighten the bolt. Alright, so now once that's completely tight, as good as you can get it, we're ready to pull it straight out using the slide hammer. Okay, and so that's important. You don't want to pry at this. You want to have this attachment and you want to be able to pull it straight out. You do not want to gouge the inside of the housing. Alright. Just like that. We're just putting some gear oil now on the wheel bearings. Set them in here and drive them in. And we're trying our best to get this to go in straight. So we got this all the way in. We have a smaller one. We're making sure not to touch the actual bearings, but the outer housing, and making sure we're not gouging the housing here. So just putting a light coat of the Permatex on the outside of the seal, just so that it seals up real nice for us. And then we'll smear some in here as well when we finally install it. But we just want to, we don't want to glob it up too bad to where, you know, we're getting it in our wheel bearing or anything, but just it's just going to help it seal a bit better. So we're just driving this in as straight as we possibly can. Just want to make sure we don't get any debris in that wheel bearing, so we'll probably just cover this with a bit of a rag and get it good and flush. So now we're just putting a little bit more of this Permatex right here where it would leak out if we did have a problem, and then this should help keep everything nice and dry. Okay, so here's our 31 spline Moser axle, and we're just going to slide it right through here through the bearing and then into the housing. This has been cleaned as well, and we're careful not to put too much pressure on the bearings or anything as we're sliding it through. And then as it gets close, it's going to slide it into the traction lock, just how we pulled it out. And you just want to make sure that the splines are all correct. Just got to feel it. There it goes. There we go. So now we're in, and as you can see, we're gonna put it in here far enough where we can see the little notch, and that's where we're gonna throw in our C-clip. Okay, now on the C-clips, if you look closely, there's a flat side and a rounded side. You want to put the rounded side facing out and the flat side, so as if they were touching like this, they'd be completely flat. Okay. Now, so we can move this axle shaft back and forth, and we can see. Can you see where the axle is coming in? So you just put it right there where it's completely on, and get it with both fingers. And all right, so the axles are in. We put on the C-clips, and then we pulled the axles out just barely until the C-clips disappeared into the housing. Now we're gonna put our post in. Okay, this is just like, it just slides right into place. Make sure that you do it with the screw hole on the outside. Put your hand in there to catch it. Okay, so we're going to line that up. We're going to start to put our screw in. And there we go, it's in place. Now we're just going to tighten this down. This is very important because it's called sometimes a grenade pin, because without this, this will grenade your entire traction lock. Okay, so we're just tightening this down with the 8mm socket. Just getting it good, nice and snug. There was a little bit of Loctite on here because it was a new bolt. So I'd recommend if it's a used one, to put some Loctite on there so that this doesn't come out. But just get it good and snug, and that'll keep this pin in here, and hopefully everything's ready to go now. Okay, so we're just using a coat of Permatex instead of the paper gasket. We're just kind of going around in a circle here and making sure that we're going to do one bead so that the actual cover smashes it nice and flat for us. And we're going to go on thick. Alright, so now we're just wrapping some Teflon tape on our new drain plug and fill plug for our Ford racing cover. And this is just recommended to help it I guess keep from leaking, and to help keep it seizing up too. Alright, we're just setting this cover down now. Hopefully everything's going to smash in just great for us. And I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it. Smash it like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Looks like it's starting to come out good. So now we're torquing down the differential cover bolts. And they said 20 to 25 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm going into kind of a star pattern. Make sure it's even. And something very important to remember if you have this kind of a girdle on your rear end, these are the load bolts. What these will do is you will tighten them down until they barely touch those main cap, the bearing caps. You do not want to put too much pressure on these. It can cause damage to it. So you want to just tighten these down until they barely touch, then torque them to 5 foot-pounds. Okay, so I'm tightening these bolts down. Okay, I'm going to torque them to 5 foot-pounds. Okay, that's not very much because you don't want to put too much pressure. Remember that these now have all the pressure of these bolts are helping push on those main caps. I'm going to do them evenly. So with these ones just barely touching at 5 foot-pounds, now there's these other jam nuts that go around them, and that we're going to tighten to 20 foot-pounds. Okay, as you can see, I have the car on the ground, and I'm just topping off the fluid level here in the differential. And the way that you fill up a differential is you take out the fill plug, which is on the opposite side of this housing. It's back up here. And you fill it up until it overflows. Now I have a Ford Racing girdle on here, and it's pretty much the same process. But this one comes with a fill plug and a drain plug. And what you do is you take the fill plug off here and the fill plug around the back, and you add fluid on this side until it starts coming out the back of the regular fill plug, and that way you know you're at your full level. Don't fill it up until it comes out of this fill plug, or you'll have too much fluid in there and you could potentially blow out one of the seals. But according to the instructions from Ford, that's the way they recommend it with this cover, is to fill fluid from the fill plug here until it starts coming out of the fill plug, the factory fill plug on the other side.